It started like most HOA problems do, with Karen, clipboard in hand, marching through the neighborhood like she owned the place. For years, Karen had clung to her self-appointed role as the HOA enforcer, finding endless excuses to scold residents. Whether it was the color of your mailbox, the height of your lawn, or even the type of flowers you planted, Karen always found something to complain about. But this time, she took things to a whole new level. One morning, I found a printed notice taped to my door, a new HOA rule banning the feeding of stray animals. The letter claimed this was to prevent disease outbreaks and protect property values, but anyone who knew Karen understood the real motive, power. She hated the cats. See, there was a small colony of strays that lived near the back of the neighborhood. They weren't aggressive. In fact, most of the time they kept to themselves, lounging in the shade or roaming quietly at night. Over the years, several residents, myself included, had taken to feeding them, ensuring they stayed healthy and well-behaved. But Karen had always despised them. She'd rant about how they were invading her property and scaring away the birds. In reality, Karen just couldn't stand the idea that someone other than her had control over anything in the neighborhood. The letter warned that anyone caught feeding stray animals would face fines and potentially even eviction if they continued. I sighed and tossed the letter aside, thinking it was just another one of Karen's empty threats. But what I didn't realize then was that Karen wasn't just threatening this time. She was about to make it her personal mission to get me out of the neighborhood, no matter what it took. A few mornings later, I stepped outside with a small bowl of kibble in hand, just like I always did. The stray cats had grown to recognize me, and a few of them trotted over as soon as they heard the door open. I knelt down, setting the bowl on the grass when I heard it. That unmistakable voice. Gotcha. I turned to see Karen storming across the lawn, her phone already in hand like she was about to call the National Guard. You, she barked, finger jabbing toward me. I warned you. No feeding those filthy animals. I sighed, trying to keep calm. Karen, these cats aren't hurting anyone. They keep the rats away, and they're not a nuisance. But Karen's face twisted in smug satisfaction. Doesn't matter. The new rule is clear. You're in violation, and you're going to pay for it. I stood my ground. It's just food, Karen. Just food, she sneered. I'll have you fined by the end of the week. And if you don't stop, I'll make sure the HOA board votes to evict you. People like you shouldn't live here. I stared at her in disbelief. Eviction? Over a bowl of cat food? I didn't say another word. Instead, I turned and walked back inside, heart pounding. Karen had crossed a line, and now I knew this wasn't just about the cats. This was personal. And she had no idea just how badly her plan was about to backfire. Over the next week, things escalated fast. At first, I noticed small things, Karen glaring at me from her porch whenever I stepped outside or whispering to neighbors while pointing in my direction. Then came the letters. I opened my mailbox one morning to find a bright red envelope marked Urgent HOA Violation Notice. Inside was a letter accusing me of creating a public health risk by feeding stray animals. It claimed I was encouraging disease-carrying pests and demanded I pay a $500 fine immediately. I knew this was Karen's doing. The letter wasn't even signed by the full HOA board, just by Karen herself, scrawled in big, obnoxious handwriting. The next day, another letter arrived, this time claiming I'd damaged communal property because some of the cats had scratched her garden furniture. Another $300 fine. By the end of the week, I had 3 violation letters in total, all threatening legal action if I didn't pay. But the funny thing, none of these letters followed official HOA procedures. Karen was going rogue, abusing her position, and trying to intimidate me. I knew I had 2 options, pay the fines and hope she'd stop or hit back. I chose the second option. What Karen didn't know was that I had something far bigger on my side, something that went way beyond HOA politics. And her little power trip was about to explode right in her face. A few days later, I noticed Karen going door to door with a clipboard in hand. At first, I assumed it was her usual gossip routine, but then I overheard her talking to my neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell. She's breaking HOA rules, Karen whispered dramatically. Feeding stray animals is against community policy. We can't have disease and fleas spreading all over the neighborhood. I'm gathering signatures to have her evicted before this gets worse. I froze. Evicted? Over feeding cats? I couldn't believe it. She was actually trying to have me thrown out of my own home. all because I dared to show kindness to some stray animals. I marched over to confront her. Karen, what are you doing? I asked, voice firm but calm. She didn't even try to hide it. I'm protecting this neighborhood from people who break the rules. You're bringing in pests and turning this place into a dump. I clenched my fists. You know that's not true. Karen just smiled smugly. Doesn't matter. Once I get enough signatures, you'll be out of here for good. I stared at her for a moment, then said quietly, I wouldn't count on that. Because what Karen didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I wasn't just some cat lover. I was the primary donor and the founder of the county's largest animal shelter. The very organization that had been rescuing, spaying, and rehoming these stray cats for years. Karen had no idea the storm she was about to bring down on herself. Karen thought she had one. She strutted around the neighborhood, waving her petition like it was a royal decree, convinced she had me cornered. But she had no idea who she was messing with. That evening, I made a few phone calls to the board members of the animal shelter I helped fund, to the local news station, and to a lawyer who specialized in tenant rights and animal welfare laws. If Karen wanted a battle, she was about to get one. The very next morning, a formal cease and desist letter was delivered to her doorstep. The HOA had no legal grounds to evict me over feeding animals, and Karen's harassment had crossed into intimidation and defamation. But I wasn't stopping there. With a single phone call, I arranged for the shelter's public relations team to contact the local news. The story? A heartless HOA leader trying to evict a community member for helping stray animals. Karen thought she was in control. But now, the whole town was about to know just how cruel and ridiculous she really was. And by the time the cameras started rolling, there would be nowhere left for her to hide. Karen woke up the next morning expecting another easy day of HOA dictatorship. Instead, she stepped outside to find a news van parked in front of her house. A reporter was already setting up with a cameraman, and a small group of neighbors had gathered, whispering among themselves. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching as the reporter approached me first. Is it true that your HOA is trying to evict you for feeding stray animals? She asked, holding out the mic. I nodded. Not only that, but Karen here, I gestured toward her where she stood frozen on her front steps, has been fabricating fines, vandalizing my property, and spreading lies about the animals. Karen's face went beet red. That's not true. She's violating HOA policies But the reporter wasn't listening. The cameraman had already turned to the real stars of the show, the cats. A few of them lounged on my porch, purring contently. Others watched from a distance, cautious but calm. They weren't sick, aggressive, or dangerous. They were just cats. And the moment that footage hit the news, Karen's entire argument would crumble. Still, she wasn't ready to back down just yet. Her next move would be her biggest mistake yet. Humiliated by the news coverage, Karen wasn't done yet. If she couldn't intimidate me or turn the neighborhood against me, she had one last trick up her sleeve. She called animal control. That afternoon, a white van pulled up and 2 officers stepped out. Karen practically sprinted over to them, her face full of fake concern. Thank goodness you're here, she cried dramatically. These wild, disease-ridden animals are taking over the neighborhood. They need to be removed immediately. I stepped forward, arms crossed. Actually, no, they don't. Karen turned to me with a smug smirk. We'll see about that. But what Karen didn't know, I had been working with animal control for years. One of the officers, Officer Daniels, recognized me immediately. His serious expression softened as he nodded in my direction. Hey, good to see you again, he said. What's going on here? I smiled. Apparently, Karen thinks she can have you take away a legally protected, managed cat colony. Daniels frowned and turned back to Karen. Wait, you do realize that under state law, managed colonies like this one are protected, right? These cats have been vaccinated, spayed, and neutered under an official shelter program. Karen's face drained of color. What? The second officer shook his head. Unless the cats are aggressive or sick, we have no reason to remove them. And from what I see, they're just fine. Karen stammered, searching for words. But they're a nuisance. They scratch things. They attract pests. Daniel sighed. Ma'am, I've seen actual animal control problems. This isn't one of them. Then he turned to me and smiled. Keep up the good work. With that, they left. Karen stood there, completely speechless. But if she thought this was bad, she had no idea what was coming next. Karen had officially lost the battle with animal control, but she wasn't done embarrassing herself just yet. Determined to save face, she decided to take it to the HOA board. A few days later, the HOA scheduled a special emergency meeting about the so-called stray animal crisis. Karen made sure every homeowner knew about it, whispering nonsense about property values dropping and diseased animals taking over. I arrived early, taking a seat near the front. Karen strutted in moments later, carrying a thick stack of evidence, mostly blurry photos of cats sitting peacefully in the sun. As soon as the meeting began, she jumped to her feet. "I demand action," she shrieked. "This woman," she jabbed a finger at me, "is violating our community rules. She's putting all of us at risk." Some neighbors murmured in confusion, but most just looked uncomfortable. The HOA president sighed. "Karen, we've reviewed the complaints. There's no rule against caring for managed stray animals." Karen slammed her hand on the table. "Then we should make one. We need a new bylaw to ban these filthy creatures once and for all." I calmly stood up. "You mean the same cats that keep rodents out of our neighborhood? The ones that have all been vaccinated and fixed?" Karen's eye twitched. "It doesn't matter. She's breaking the rules." The HOA president sighed again. "Karen, we also reviewed your eviction petition. Not only does it have zero legal standing, but you tried to falsify signatures." The entire room went silent. Karen's face turned bright red. That's a lie." The HOA president pulled out a copy of the petition. "We called several people listed here. They never signed this." More murmurs. Neighbors started glaring at Karen. A man in the back stood up. "So she tried to evict someone over cats and faked signatures? Are you serious?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You lied to us, Karen," another neighbor snapped. "You wasted everyone's time just because you have a personal vendetta?" Karen's meltdown escalated. "You're all idiots. You're ruining this community. We should be thanking me for trying to keep this place clean." The HOA president slammed the gavel. "Enough. Karen, due to your actions, we're moving forward with a vote to remove you from the HOA board." Karen froze. The gasps turned to cheers. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, watching the very person who had tried to ruin my life lose everything instead. But the best part? Karen had no idea the worst was yet to come. If Karen thought she could scream her way out of this, she was about to learn a brutal lesson. The neighborhood had turned against her. The vote to remove her from the HOA board was scheduled for the next week. By then, the entire neighborhood was buzzing about Karen's attempted fraud. Turns out, people didn't take too kindly to someone forging their signatures. Imagine that. Karen must have thought she could still charm or intimidate her way out of trouble. She went door to door trying to rally support. But most people shut the door in her face. The day of the vote arrived. The meeting room was packed. Karen, looking smug, took a seat up front like she still owned the place. The HOA president wasted no time. "All in favor of removing Karen from the board due to misconduct, raise your hand." I raised mine immediately. One by one, hand after hand went up. Karen's eyes darted around, her face twisting in horror as she realized. It was almost unanimous. "No," she shrieked. "You can't do this. I did nothing wrong." The HOA president slammed the gavel. "Karen, you're officially removed from the board, effective immediately." She screamed in rage. "You'll regret this. You'll all regret this." And then, humiliated and defeated, she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the room shook. But here's where it gets even better. Without Karen in power, Theo dropped all the ridiculous complaints against me. No more warnings, no more harassment. And Karen, she wasn't done causing problems. But her next move? It was her downfall. Karen had lost her HOA throne, but if you think that meant she would back down quietly, you don't know Karen. A few days later, I woke up to something bizarre. My cat food station, gone. The shelter's donation bin on my porch, missing. And the worst part, the security camera I had installed was smashed to pieces. Karen had gone full villain mode. I immediately called the police. Vandalism, destruction of property, and theft. When the officer arrived, I handed over my phone, showing him photos of how the setup used to look. "And I already know who did it," I said, arms crossed. The officer sighed. Let me guess. Karen. Turns out, I wasn't the first neighbor to file a complaint against her. In fact, Karen had been harassing people for years, but because she had HOA power, nobody fought back. Now that she was just another homeowner, her enemies were lining up. The police paid Karen a little visit. When she saw them pull up, she came outside, already red-faced and fuming. "What is this nonsense? I'm the one being harassed," she screeched. The officer didn't buy it. "Ma'am, do you have any reason to be destroying property that isn't yours? Those disgusting stray feeders were ruining my neighborhood. I was doing a public service." The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "Right? Well, you're under investigation for trespassing and property damage. If we find evidence, you'll be looking at some serious fines or worse." That shut her up real fast. But this wasn't the end. Because Karen had one last, desperate trick up her sleeve, and it was going to be her biggest mistake yet. Most people, after having the police called on them, would take a step back. Not Karen. Instead, she doubled down in the dumbest way possible. A week after the police incident, I received a letter in my mailbox. It looked official at first glance, stamped, typed in legal format, and signed in big, bold letters. "Cease and desist, legal action pending." Karen was threatening to sue me. I burst out laughing. See, I had a few lawyer friends, so I sent them a picture of the letter. Within minutes, they texted back. "This isn't real." Karen had faked a legal notice in an attempt to intimidate me. I wasn't just dealing with an HOA tyrant. I was dealing with someone too arrogant to know when to quit. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took the fake letter, made 10 copies, and handed them out to every neighbor on my block. The neighborhood exploded. People who had been afraid of Karen for years now had proof of her corruption. Someone reported her for mail fraud. Another neighbor called the HOA board to investigate her harassment claims. And me? I called my lawyer. Because if Karen wanted a legal battle, I was about to give her one she'd never forget. If Karen thought she could bully me into submission with a fake lawsuit, she was about to learn a hard lesson. I sent the letter to my lawyer, who immediately recognized what was going on. "This is fraud," he said. "Mail fraud, document forgery, and harassment. If she sent this through the postal service, she could be looking at federal charges." I smiled. "Perfect. Let's make sure she learns her lesson." The next day, Karen got a real legal notice delivered by a process server. I was suing her for harassment, defamation, and falsifying legal documents. And when I say she panicked, I mean full meltdown. She showed up at my house, banging on the door, screaming, "You can't do this to me. This isn't fair." I opened the door just wide enough to say, "See you in court, Karen," then closed it right in her face. The court date came fast. Karen arrived, looking visibly shaken. Gone was her smug attitude. Instead, she sat quietly, fidgeting, while my lawyer calmly dismantled every single one of her lies. The fake lawsuit, fraud. The fines she tried to impose, illegitimate. The HOA rules she claimed supported her, non-existent. By the time we were done, Karen looked like she wanted to disappear. The judge didn't just dismiss her nonsense. He fined her thousands for harassment, defamation, and abuse of power. And the best part, Karen was officially removed from the HOA board. Her reign of terror was over. But the real cherry on top, the court ordered her to pay damages, some of which went directly to the animal shelter I helped fund. Meaning that, in the end, Karen was forced to financially support the very stray cats she hated. Karen didn't just lose in court, she lost the entire neighborhood. Word spread fast. The same people she'd bullied for years now saw her for what she was, a petty tyrant who abused her power for no reason. Neighbors openly mocked her in the group chat. Someone even posted a meme. Camera with flash a picture of Karen with a caption, "Eviction speedrun, failed." It went viral in our HOA. Then came the real backlash. She tried walking around the neighborhood like nothing had happened, but suddenly, people stopped inviting her to HOA meetings. No one took her complaints seriously anymore. Neighbors she used to intimidate started ignoring her completely. At one point, she tried reporting my house for an unauthorized garden. The HOA responded with a one-sentence email. "Karen, please stop." And then the final blow. Karen's husband? Embarrassed beyond belief. A month after the court ruling, A moving truck pulled up to Karen's house. She was gone. She didn't just lose the battle, she lost everything. With Karen out of the picture, I went back to feeding the stray cats without fear. Even better, the shelter stepped in officially and worked with the HOA to create a community-supported cat colony. Instead of being harassed, my efforts were recognized and supported. Several of the cats were even adopted by neighbors, turning from strays into beloved pets. The HOA? They never bothered me again. And every time I saw a well-fed cat lounging on a porch, I smiled. Karen lost. The cats won. Justice was served. A few months later, I got an anonymous tip from a former neighbor. Karen's new neighborhood? Overrun with stray cats. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Somewhere, fate was having a field day.